With the cage bolted together, I can see where it naturally sits in the car, and it's reminded me that I'm going to have to remove all of the soundproofing. Now, funnily enough, with this car, somebody has already removed quite a lot of it already, but there's still a few traces of it here, and that's where I want to put some of my reinforcing plates. I'm going to be systematic about it and use that as the excuse to remove it all. I've heard there's actually some special ways of doing this with dried ice and things like that, but for me this was actually the first job I ever did on a rally car that I was preparing 25 years ago with a school friend of mine, Simon McKinley, and so it's kind of a ceremonial thing for me, and just chipping it away with the hammer and a flat-headed screwdriver. So I'm just going to get on with and do it that way.
This first section is coming off nice and easily, which is surprising because it's a bit that's remaining. There should have been a layer of it all across that bit of the floor, but as you can see, this Kadett, just like every other D or E I've ever had, has a leak on the left hand side, and the water has gotten in underneath the ceiling and causing that surface rust. Luckily in this case it's not very bad, and I don't think there's any repairs required other than just surface cleaning. I'm not 100% sure whether this comes from the scuttle panel or from the bottom edge of the windscreen. And actually, when we strip off the sound deadening inside in the scuttle panel, it'll be interesting to investigate in this car as if that's where it was. Maybe we'll come to a final conclusion as to where this leak comes from. Okay, we're getting committed now. I'm going to remove the outer steering column. I had been wheeling the car in and out of the garage, so I had been slotting in the steering wheel and using it to steer going in and out, but now Eric's blocking the garage until he's rolling again. There's just 3 bolts holding this in, but one of them actually is designed to shear off its head when it's fitted, so that as a security device. Apparently car thieves are more likely to be carrying a full socket set instead of a vice grip. Anyway, I'm glad this is easy to do. I'll have to disable the steering lock pin in this, or maybe I'll keep it because I have one that I did before, and I'll just show you what I did, because it's just be a shame to waste another good one that's still fully operational. But then I will have a different key. The cool thing is that this key matches the doors, which is nice. It also opens a couple of other Opel Kadetts that I have, so that's 1980s security for you. In the footwell, I was starting to get into some more stubborn sections of the soundproofing, and chips were flying left, right and centre, so I decided to put on the safety goggles. Back along the tunnel as well, some of it's quite stubborn because this area is over the exhaust, so it's been baked in position over the years. That's the front section cleared. Move back into the midsection below the seats. Again, some of this is fairly stubborn, but luckily the 2 floor sections have already had it all removed. I'm convinced this Kadett always wanted to be a rally car. I'd also left the handbrake in place for manoeuvring the car in and out of the garage. So again, with this newfound commitment, I'm going to remove the handbrake. That's because some chips could potentially fall down into this little area that surrounds it, and I just don't want to have bits of soundproofing trapped down in there. So I'll remove the handbrake. It's 2 bolts in the interior, and then I have to disconnect it from the cables underneath. So I've jacked and I'm supporting the car. That trailing arm will be coming out soon for a lick of paint. I'll just drop it down on the stands, and then I'll be safe to maneuver underneath the car. So a bit of lubricant there for the 2 nuts, but this has been adjusted recently enough, so I don't expect them to be too tight. Sometimes these can be an absolute nightmare, and you'll end up shearing the bar that they're mounted to. As you can see, there's very little resistance there. The grips are just to stop the bar rotating, and it's 2 nuts just tightened against each other to hold it in adjustment. So it's very easy to tighten a handbrake cable on one of these once you get under the car. You can see some of the underfloor soundproofing there. I'm going to have to remove some bits of that perhaps in the next video, because I'll be welding in that area on the other side. So that's the handbrake pulled out, and you can see there's actually a bit of a bend in that. So maybe it got a bit of an over tightening, or it just might be the angle that the cables meet it and it bent over time. So all the components from Eric are packed away in these old factory fish boxes. They got rid of them because they were worn and could no longer be cleaned to food safety standards. I'll drop the car down back level just to make it comfortable to work inside. That trailing arm looks worse than it is. It's a good time to be taking it off and cleaning it up soon. Back inside, I'll just stick a rag into this hole and stop the bits of soundproofing getting stuck down inside there. I'll probably weld plates into the sides of this tunnel and mount a crossbar for the rear seat support to hold that up. So useful to remove all this. It's also going to be a weight saving having it all gone from the car, and I think it's also less flammable material inside in the car. Okay, that's the middle section done, and now onto the back seat. This is above the petrol tank, and this is an awful lot easier to remove because it would be a cool area. Now my problem is that the chips are going into this section behind the door cards and the quarter panels, and that goes right down to the sills, so there would be bits of it going in there, and if they get in there they're going to be there forever. Some of this actually will crack off without the hammer. It's like removing flat chocolate from a baking tin. Sitting down on the job. Back seat area done. Move on to the boot area. These bits are actually easier from the interior. I'll move around the back then and finish it off through the rear aperture. So those are the last few bits. So quite a job to do, but at least some of it was done already. Bits of it went absolutely everywhere. I'll roughly sweep it all up into a bucket. Just curious to have a look at how much of it came off. Can remove those two bits of cardboard and the rag from where the handbrake is fitted. It's great that there were no nasty surprises underneath all this sound deadening. Sometimes actually near those rear arches there can be a bit of a moisture trap there, and there could have been rust, but not in this case. So my initial assessment that this was a very good shell. In fact, I would actually say that this is an exceptional shell for 40-year-old Kadett.
There is actually a bit of weight in that, so there is a performance advantage to getting rid of all that too.
There's about 5 kilos in the bucket, so originally there was probably 10 kilograms in the whole car. At 100 brake horsepower per tonne, that was one cheap horsepower to gain back.